The Houston Rockets enter this season in a lot different position than they did in the recent years. When they headed into last season, there was optimism that hopefully they could just establish a culture for once. Because we look back 2 years ago, what the Houston Rockets were was a clown show. Just keeping it straight up and honest right there with you guys. That was not organized basketball. It was a mess. Too many young guys, no veterans. Coaching was atrocious. Ime Udoka comes in there, establishes a great coach now, one of the premier coaches in the NBA, in my opinion. And then you added in guys like Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet, Jeff Green. They brought a culture with them and established that in Houston last year. Great for the team. What do I look forward to now for the Houston Rockets? Well, this year now, we saw what they're capable of doing. They took a big jump last season, much improved overall. And now they head into this year with expectations. At least expectations that I'll put on them. I don't view them as a contending team, no. But do I think this team can make a big jump? Absolutely. Listen, they're in the West. Not an easy conference to be in. It's going to be a battle. There's only a couple teams I could look at that say they're probably not going to do much this season, including Portland, San Antonio. But, I mean, San Antonio's got Victor Wembanyama for crying out loud, and that's one of the worst teams in the West you could possibly say if you're even ranked them that low. The West is tough. So they could be a 7th or 8th seed this season, but they're going to be a lot better and most improved team overall. They're going to look better. They're going to be more productive. They're going to be a more talented roster. And in fact, when I look at this Houston Rockets roster, I look at a team that, in my opinion, I'm okay with saying that they might be the most deep team in the NBA. You got a guys that I'm going to talk about in a few moments that on your third unit, Jock Landale, Jeff Green, Jayshawn Tate, Aaron Holiday. These are guys those are pretty darn good third string guys, if we're going to be honest. But I want to break down this roster and why I'm so high on them. At the point guard spot, you have Fred VanVleet, a good veteran guy, a guy that can set the table for your team, a good leader. We saw what he was capable of doing last year for this team. He's going to continue to be that point guard for them. He was a great signing 2 years ago. He's going to be perfect for this season as well. Then you look at Jalen Green. The second half of last season, people need to remember. Jalen Green turned up a massive amount. Almost had a most improved season if you're going to talk about if we're going to be honest now, from the first half to the second half of the season. Great year overall in the second half of the season for Jalen Green. Then look at a guy in Dylan Brooks and Amen Thompson. I think they're going to be battling out for the starting small forward spot. I'll give Brooks the edge right now because he fits culture-wise. He fits with the system a little bit better than Amen Thompson does at this point. However, Amen Thompson is a guy that I am so high on. Listen, this is a guy that I think will be an all-star one day in the NBA. It might be a few years out, but his defensive capabilities are elite. He also is not that much of a liability on offense. We see he's able to attack to the rim. He's able to facilitate to a certain extent. He still has a lot to improve on the offensive end, but he's the guy that I'm very, very high on. Dylan Brooks and then Thompson battling for the starting small forward spot, backup small forward spot. Then we go to power forward. Jabari Smith will be holding that down. He had a much better season overall last year. His numbers maybe didn't improve drastically, but you could see he fit into a system. You saw he kind of established his role, what he's going to be able to do at the NBA level, and he was able to excel in that role last season. I love seeing that for him. And then Alperen Sengun. He is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. When you talk about his capabilities, and I understand the center position is deep in the NBA, loaded talent there. When you talk about guys, you have the best player in the NBA in Jokic. You have a guy that could easily debate the second best player, wherever you want to rank him, Joel Embiid. You have guys like Karl Anthony Towns, Victor Wembanyama. The list goes on and on and on of top centers. Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis, so on and so forth. So much talent at the center position that I think we overlook Sengun quite a bit. But he is a guy that is so talented, will be an all-star in the NBA eventually. Absolutely love what he brings to the table. And you could say he's probably debatably the best player on this team. I absolutely love what he brings to the table. That's the starting five for this team right now. The backup to Sengun is Steven Adams. Missed all last year with injury. But when we talk about a guy that's going to set the culture, that's a guy you want in that locker room for your team, and it's also, if he's able to return to health, is a guy that's going to be able to be one of the best screen setters in the entire NBA, one of the best pick and roll players, a solid, he's not a liability on defense. He's a good overall offensive player, can help you be a good player, a good offensive player overall. He's going to be the backup for Sengun, and I love that for this team because, listen, he's a guy that probably, as long as he returns to where he was prior to injury, he was a guy that could start on most NBA teams. He's a good center. Him being your backup is huge for the Houston Rockets. Let's go up to the power forward spot. Backing up Jabari Smith, I've got Tari Eason. He was hurt for a lot of last season, but a lot of people forget, I'm also very high on Tari Eason. I think he's a guy that can easily be your NBA rotational guy, a guy that can play 10 or so years in the NBA. Love what he brings to the table. And then backing him up will be Jeff Green, a good veteran as well that was productive last season. Then also going back to the center spot real quickly, you also have Jock Landale. He's a guy that I think will be a solid third unit guy at center. Let's go up to the small forward spot as well. Third string small forward. Listen, the third guy on my depth chart, Cam Whitmore. He could also put him in at shooting guard, whatever you want to call it. He should be in the rotation or at least competing for minutes. But I love Cam Whitmore's game. We saw so much potential flash last season. We saw what he's capable of doing on the offensive end. And he's a guy that you're saying is in the back of the rotation. That's how deep this team is. And then Jayshawn Tate, another guy that's a good NBA player. Then you talk about the top pick in the draft for the Houston Rockets this year, Reed Sheppard. He is a guy that has shown a lot of flash in the summer league. Preseason, he looks great as well. And he's going to be off the bench, which I think is a perfect situation for him. He's not going to be thrust into a massive role right out the gate. He can play spot minutes, and eventually he can be mentored by Fred VanVleet, whatever the case may be, and maybe he becomes a franchise point guard one day down the road. But for right now, he can rotationally grow. He's starting spot minutes whenever he needs to play. I think he's going to be a great bench player for the Houston Rockets this season. And then Aaron Holiday, who I alluded to a little bit earlier. He's also just a solid overall player. Not going to get a ton of minutes this year. Yes, he's the only other backup point guard specifically on the depth chart, but Reed Sheppard should be able to get some of those minutes as well. Also going to give some of the minutes to other guys as well on that team. That's what I got for this roster. When I look at it, like I said, the strength is the depth. There's a lot of guys still going to be developing. A lot of young talent is still going to be sought out and trying to find the right ways in the NBA, trying to find what they do best at the league level. But when I talk about this team, they are very, very deep. There is guys that I can trust, about 11, 12 guys I can say, you know what? They can play at the NBA level with these. Then I'll talk about overall what this team's capable of. The weakness for this team, I should say, is the backup point guard spot. You know, it's not the biggest issue in the world. Like I said, Reed Sheppard should be able to get some of those minutes occasionally. You do have Aaron Holiday. But if I had to pick something that I'd like to improve on, it would be adding a backup point guard to this team. Just my own personal preference. You only have 2 point guards that are actual point guards on this team right now. Would like to see that happen. Now, you do have one roster spot open currently because AJ Griffin's retirement. Now, does that mean they're going to go pursue somebody? Not sure on that. That's obviously up in the air. Only time will tell. But you do have an open roster spot for the Houston Rockets. So that could be utilized to assign that backup point guard. A la guy like Dennis Smith, a la guy like Markelle Fultz. There's other guys available at the point guard spot you could go try signing. As for the two-way spots, N'Faly Dante, Jack McVay, and Jonathan Williams. All 3 guys that can be rotational guys. You could possibly get some spot minutes here and there if needed. No one that I'm going to rely on a ton. Obviously, Jonathan Williams played on the team last year. He got some rotational minutes here and there. So you could trust him to a certain extent. But overall, these guys would be solid two-way guys. Nothing too elaborate there on those guys. Here's what I do look at for the Houston Rockets, though, for this year. Will they make another jump? I believe so. Do they set themselves up, though, to be a team where we're heading into the 2025-26 NBA season and saying, you know what? The Rockets are a team that we're seeing could be a top 3-4 seed. I think they have the capability and potential to be that. It's only a matter of time to see if that's what they can carry out. But that's the big goal for this year. Take the next step forward for the Houston Rockets. And here's the other thing I want to keep an eye on for the Rockets. I mentioned many times that this team has insane amount of depth. All those guys can't play. You're going to have some guys as talented as maybe a Cam Whitmore, a Tar Eason, those type of guys that might not get into the NBA game. And those guys should be in the rotation on any NBA roster in the NBA. What that means is that you have an abundance amount of talent. Not enough minutes, though, to give it to everybody. And also, eventually, in the next couple of years, you're going to have to start paying these guys as well. So what I look at for the Houston Rockets is I say, hey, I think Sengun is a legitimate all-star. I think Jalen Green's an all-star. I think Amen Thompson is a potential future all-star. Reed Sheppard should be determined. I think Jabari Smith is a guy that you say, hey, he's learned how to play his role. He's going to get better and better at that, I think. He should be able to solidify that as the power forward for the franchise. But can you go acquire another superstar? Houston is not a hard place to get guys to go play in. People like Houston. Texas has overall the lowest. You have no income tax in the state of Texas. So that's obviously a big benefit. It's a nice place to live at, a great big city in Houston. You could attract star players to play for you in Houston. My thing I want to approach the Houston Rockets with is saying, hey, can you package some of these young guys up eventually and go acquire a superstar that fits the timeline and fits the culture of this team? That's something to really keep it on because the Houston Rockets are in prime position to do just that. Overall, like I said, this Houston Rockets team is a team that I love looking at because I think this team has immense talent, great depth, and so much young talent that I think will be able to take the next step in the coming years.